Well, hello, and welcome to episode 63 of It's Never Sunny in Seattle, a Seattle Mariners podcast. I'm your host today, Evan James, joined by my co-hosts, as always, Mikey and Anders Jorstad. And the last time we talked, it was the morning before the Mariners' historic 18-inning playoff loss to the Houston Astros. I'm still a little sore about it, honestly, feeling a little sour, but I wanted to ask Mikey, who was actually at the game, to break down a little bit of that experience, because I'm sure it was something else.
It was so fucked up.
do you guys remember when I said it's not like the Mariners gave up a home run to Jeremy Pena or something?
We do recall.
Yeah. Oh my god. It was the best atmosphere I've ever seen at T-Mobile, and that includes in 2001, although I was a kid, so it's like a little hard to recall. Because I've seen some wild games, but I think it's proof, what Jesse Winker said. It's like it is an electric factory.
The electric factory.
So, yeah, for the first, I would say 11 innings, super good game. After that, it was just kind of like, okay, this is actually just kind of fucked up.
At some point, it enters sicko territory. I think we got there.
It was definitely
Especially
sicko
sober,
territory,
especially with 9 innings of no beer.
I don't know if I had any alcohol. Yeah, I didn't. So I got there, and because I'm a sicko, and because I didn't want to wait in any lines, there was like, we went and got, I got a corn dog. So I got that's where I started. I just wanted water. And we waited in like this beer line. There was no water because my friend is a silly man. So we were like, fuck, okay. So we went and bought a fucking lemonade and then just took it and went, basically, I don't know, I kind of chugged some, but we just dumped it out.
Those T-Mobile Park lemonades slap so hard.
They're pretty good. So I drank like half of it and then we poured it out and just filled it up with water, which is like, yeah, water with lemon. And I had a fucking corn dog and I was like, yeah, that'll get me through the game. And then a handful of innings in, I was like, I need some caffeine, so I got like an affogato. And that was great. They ran out of espresso by that inning, which is like the fucking fourth or something.
Feels like a cardinal sin to run out of coffee at a Mariners game. That's like against the rules.
So I just did like drip over ice cream, which was fine. It was actually quite delicious. But that didn't get me through the whole fucking game because the game lasted 18 innings, which was fucked up. I was there, and there just reached a point where I started having existential thoughts. I was just like, I don't know. I don't know that I don't know that this is real, or I don't know, like, this could be a simulation or I forgot what they call it, but where someone's like acting on the, like your little puppets. I was like, this could only happen to the Mariners. And I don't know, the suppression of offense, I don't know if it was because playoffs, because ball, because it was quite bright in the background and there was a shadow over home plate, or the air. I don't know if it was harder to see the ball. But there reached a point where I was like, this sucks ass. And I was like, what is going to happen if we run out of pitchers? Because we were close.
I thought about that too. Yeah.
I don't know. And then there was, the Eric Swanson things. Like, really? So he was available this whole time?
We wanted to see them use the rest of the bullpen.
It was a great experience. But there reached a point, it was almost like being at a concert and your legs are starting to get tired and you're like, yeah, I actually do hope that this is like the last song. I don't know if anyone has that experience than me, but I do. Yeah, it was fucked up. I literally got a pizza in the 18th inning and like, I was just so tired, so hungry. And like so out of it. I had been there since 11 a.m. and I left at like 7 something on my fucking e-bike that was outside the stadium, unlocked the entire game. So I had that to worry about because I lost my key on the way there, apparently. What a fucking experience. Like, I know it's like overwrought, but like only the Mariners could have, partaken, I think is the word, in a game like that.
Does it make you guys feel better or worse that Lance McCullers said that the Mariners
Better.
could have beaten anybody else but them?
Better.
The same,
So good.
but good. Feel good
No.
about that.
No, better. Yeah.
I mean, watching the Yankees roll over against the Astros made me feel pretty good because our games were at least competitive and the Yankees were just like phoning it in.
Yeah, the Yankees were pretty gassed by this time. Yeah, I mean, we knew that though. The Mariners played their little hearts out, and they played 2 games in front of the hometown crowd for the price of 1. You can't ask for much more than that. You could have asked for some offense, I guess. That's the thing that sucked about it, really, for Mikey, was that like, if there's lots of offense, it's pretty exciting, but that was legitimately a like nail biter, skin of your teeth, strikeouts, full counts, just no offense game. And I guess as Felix Hernandez fans that we are used to that and love that kind of in its own way, but that wasn't, I think, what people wanted for 18 innings. But hey, they brought playoffs home to Seattle, so I think we all feel good about that.
Yeah, $200 for that.
Hey, you get your money's worth for sure.
Yeah, I did. I wish I wouldn't have. I wish they would have fucking God. Just I don't know. I think it might have felt worse if they lost 1-0.
You know what's
in
funny?
9 innings.
You paid 10 times more for the Mariners' last home game this season than Yankees fans did for theirs.
Ouch.
What?
Yeah, Did you not see tickets for their Game 4 were as low as $20 in Yankee Stadium?
Really?
Yeah.
Yo, Yankees fans fucking suck. I'll say it. I'll say it.
He'll say it. Nobody else will.
Yeah. Oh God. Like I said, when I don't remember if I said this on the pod, but when I went to watch the Mets, they were literally like heckling their own players. They're like, Eduardo Escobar, you fucking suck. You suck dick. Go fucking kill yourself. And
Is that your Nicky Scarletta impression? It sounds like his voice.
They all sound like that. There were literal New York guys sitting in front of me and behind me. And I was just like,
no, New York fans are a different breed, man. The fact that people can boo their own players is just frankly astounding to me.
I will boo Jake Fraley.
I'll boo Steven Souza. I'll boo my own players if they suck as people.
Correct.
Yeah, that's not about their on the field performance. That's about them being shitty.
So to that I say, go ahead and boo Josh Donaldson. I have no problem with that.
Correct.
That man, I mean, he's ain't good. Anyways, that was my experience. Yeah, oh God, just what a fucking game.
We're really earning that explicit rating on this podcast.
We are.
Not for kids.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
the season is over. It's in the rear view. The book is entirely closed. And I think one of the important things that happened since the last time we had a chance to talk, both on here and the Lookout Landing pod as well, is that they did the end of the year press wrapper. And I do want to park on that real quick because there was a couple of things Jerry said that I thought were interesting, as well as Justin Hollander, but they made it pretty clear that in like the cases of our free agents, I wouldn't say they don't expect anybody back, but the door is open for them to leave more than it has ever been for all of them, I would say. Was there anything that stood out to you guys specifically in that press conference that Jerry said that illuminated anything for you in terms of looking back on it all now, or are you just rolling with it for the future for now?
I think the thing is that you never can. I think that what was, I don't forget what Jerry's exact quote was about spending, but he said they were going to be active. I think that's a good thing because usually when Jerry says like, "Oh, we still have our ears open," like you never know, that means we're not doing anything. So, he didn't say that. He said, "Oh, we're definitely going to be active. We understand we need to bolster this team." And then he said, "But the majority of this roster is already in place," which, like, obviously, like, I don't think anyone expected him to turn over more than half the roster. So I don't really think that's a hot take. But I think what that means is, like, They're probably going to add 1, maybe 2 key components. I kind of expect an offseason similar to last year, where they had a big signing and they had a big trade, and then they had a couple of minor signings and trades, and that's kind of what I think is going to happen. So yeah, I was excited about that. Jerry had some interesting comments about the farm system, where he basically said that he thinks the farm is still strong. He just thinks that the emphasis at this point is mostly in the lower levels. I kind of agree with that. Like, I am very excited about Harry Ford. I am pretty excited about Cole Young. We've talked ad nauseum about all the arms that are in the mid to upper levels that we're interested in. So I don't think he's wrong that, like, the farm is not dead, but it's certainly not packing the same punch that it was before. But I wonder, the idea with building a consistent winning club is to have a farm that is consistently producing players, and I think right now they appear to be in the position to do that. But whether it stays that way remains to be seen, especially given the fact that they're probably going to make some trades.
This team would have been so scary with Jesse Winker hitting.
Oh, I know, man. That's another thing, was that he seemed to indicate that Winker will be fine. Like, he put out that fire pretty quickly, it seemed.
Yeah, there was a lot of discussion about that, and I thought it was interesting where his exact phrasing was, there's no reason to believe that Winker has fundamentally changed as a player outside of the injuries, which I agreed with. I do think that, and I was surprised at how quickly he glossed over it. They acknowledged some of the ball related challenges, or, the T-Mobile field aspect as it related to Jesse Winker. I understand why they don't want to park on that issue and talk about it very much, because what can they do about it? You know what I mean? Like, if the ball's going to suck and it's going to ruin Jesse Winker, it's going to do it no matter what the Mariners do or say. So I understand their inclination to, like, let sleeping dogs lie to some degree. I do wonder if we aren't setting ourselves up for that to be a continued blind spot if we're just not going to address it. But maybe it will be counteracted by some of the changes to the shift next year anyway, in a positive way. So yeah, that was interesting. You're right. They specifically, I believe, even called it a fire. Like, Jerry even came out and said, "There's been controversy. There's no controversy. He had surgery." So, that in particular was noteworthy. For our Discord, there's been discussion about Evan White and Kyle Lewis. I feel like Jerry was pretty clear that both of those guys are going to be on the 40-man next year. At least in the minor leagues, if they have some reason to be on the major league roster and they're healthy enough for it, they will be. His Kyle Lewis comments were weird. Kind of basically said he's as healthy as can be. I think that's an indication that things are not great. With Evan White, he reinforced that this is not a new injury, that he continues to rehab. He didn't have another surgery or anything like that. It's just a slow process. So that's all interesting. But I think we should talk a little bit about the newbie to the Mariners organization.
Well, I should say first that I interrupted Mikey's flow on that answer. I don't know if you had more to say about the presser, Mikey.
Oh, just in general. Well, I do want to say, I think Winker is not going to be on the team next year. I tend to agree that I think his struggles are overblown. I think that he did legitimately struggle, but that, like, as I wrote about weeks ago, I think, he's proven, and albeit, a year and a half, but he's proven to be a good hitter. So I do think he gets back to at least, it's kind of hard to say too, because even within those 2 years, he has highs and lows, but I think that he's a well above average hitter next year. Was, like we talked about before the season, should not have hit him as much as he did against lefties. I think we all said that was a bad idea. But I think that they'll be shopping him. And as for, Lewis, White, Haniger, I don't think you can have 3 of those guys, or even 2 on your 26 man, unless they're really, you really have a good roster. So I guess I just want to add that about Winker. They really need stability. That's what this roster needs. You can't have you can't have the uncertainty of Kelnick, of Moore, of Trammell, of Toro, of Lewis, of White. Like that's, yeah. So I think they need more boring players.
You said that you think they trade Winker. Do you have any inclination, maybe not where he goes, because I realize that that's just speculating, but do you think that that's like a greener pastures trade? What's the phrase they use for it? A change of scenery trade,
Yeah, change of
specifically.
scenery.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I think it remains really fucking hard as a hitter. Yeah, we really are earning that E. To hit a fly ball or even line drive at T-Mobile Park, like hard, like a barrel, and then for it to just end up at the warning track. Like, I think hitters are like, what am I supposed to do? Like, he went from one of the best, and I do not think, because I think the peripherals say Jesse Winker was like hit the ball hard in 2020 and 2021, was a good hitter in ways that he did not this year. So I think there's a lot of mental stuff that comes with hitting at T-Mobile, which by park factors, the hardest park to hit in MLB. Great American's top 3. I think anywhere where, to right field, right center, like it's at least more neutral, I think he'll thrive. So I don't think they'll be looking for much. I think it's pretty likely that they'll trade him to replenish, some on the farm and get someone to take on at least some of the money. I don't know what you can get back from him though after that season. I mean, he's such a limited skill set. It's kind of like Dan Vogelbach. It's like, yeah, he rakes against righties. He can't run. He can't field. He's got one skill. So that's my take on that.
Anything else on that? On either the presser or Winker Durs, or should we talk Weaver?
Let's do it.
I'm going to kick it over to Mikey right away. And we have a couple of questions from our Discord as it relates to Luke Weaver. One thing I can answer right off the top is that he doesn't have any options. He has to be with the team. So he's either going to be in the bullpen, the rotation, or not on the team. It's unlikely he spends time in Tacoma, which was my original thought when I saw that this was what was going on was, he's going to be either starting in Tacoma or he's a bullpen option. It really looks like only the latter of those two is in play. But Mikey, we had a question from B. Do we think there's a specific reason to believe the Mariners can unlock anything with Luke Weaver? And Ian wanted to know, same thing, repertoire changes that could be made to unlock him, any kind of things that you think the Mariners see in this profile?
About 2 years ago, I would say Luke Weaver was kind of the poster boy for vertical approach angle. Obviously, there's like Garrett Cole, who's a bigger name. But like throws out of a high slot. I think, let me check his extension. Like gets down the mound pretty well. Yeah, like pretty. It wasn't as good this year, but like gets down the mound fairly well. Throws from a high slot. He really, I think, starting. We don't have numbers going back before 2020. You could probably tell from some of the more indirect data, but he started cutting his fastball. And one way to be able to tell if they're doing that is by, adding gyro spin. So he threw in 2020, I think it was like perfect efficiency almost. Yeah, 98% active spin. Last year, 95. This year, 92. So that means, he's going from a relatively vertical arm slot, a pretty high 3/4 arm slot, throwing with a lot of efficiency to, he started to drop down farther. And I think that's part of why he started to cut his fastball. So that immediately is interesting. Like he at least had a very good fastball, has since lost it. The changeup's very good. Like those two are it's a good 1-2 punch. And I think it's a really good like base to work off of, because you can throw the fastball a lot. And that also means you don't have bad splits against lefties because you can throw your changeup a lot. The issue, and I wonder when I wrote this actually, but I think in 2020, maybe late 2019. Sorry, my keyboard's probably very loud. December of 2019, I wrote Luke Weaver developed a third pitch, and it was about his cutter. I thought that he had tightened up his cutter movement, his release with his cutter, and thus like his cutter's location. I apparently threw a Chris Paddock comp on him, which at this point does not mean very much. Actually, and again, every episode, I will stop talking in a second, but I think we see pretty often that guys will add a cutter to the repertoire and they'll lose their fastballs. That happened with Paddock. That happened with Luke Weaver. So correlation isn't causation, but I think he's got a good chance to add a pretty good slider. So between those three, if he can get his fastball back, I think he's going to be a good number 5. And that's what I think he is. I think that's what the Mariners are hoping that he is a good number 5. I know that he started. I don't know if y'all remember, but he was the player that got ejected for the standoff between him and Robbie Ray when they played the Royals. So Luke Weaver, extremely interesting. I think as his extension has worsened, if you're throwing out of a high slot, you want to pair steep pitches with that arm slot. So I think that the Mariners, I have a feeling that they're going to try and get him, throwing some sort of slider, and they're going to add a 2-seamer. That's my call.
What they do with most people.
Right. So, yeah.
I would like to push back first on the notion that the Mariners can't put him in Tacoma, because he was claimed off of waivers by the Mariners in the first place, which means that there's only 7 other teams. I don't remember exactly how many. There's not a lot of other teams that would have a chance to claim him. Probably fewer than that even, because the waivers go in reverse record order. So, there's a decent chance that the Mariners sneak him into Tacoma through like a midwinter DFA. Like, I kind of wonder if they DFA him, after a big signing or after the 40-man has passed, so everyone else has clogged up all their 40-man rosters, and try to sneak him into Tacoma that way. I wouldn't be surprised if they do that. Maybe that doesn't happen until spring training or whatever. But I do think he's potentially, like as Mikey said, either another 5th starter option, of which they now have 70 million, or one of next year's bullpen breakout guys, which they have, a huge quantity of every single season. And to the point of number 5 starters, that kind of goes in with Azrael's question, which is, if Emerson Hancock pitches out of his mind in spring training, does he start at AAA with a stacked rotation? Does Marco or Flexen trade signal they want Hancock in the 5th starting pitcher spot, or do they prefer another veteran? And to that I say, I have no idea what they're doing with that number 5 spot. I think it's pretty much Marco's to lose at this point. I think Flexen is more likely to get traded just because Marco's been here for a long time and they want to keep him around. And, they've spoken very highly of his work ethic. And I feel like one of the prospects would have to pitch out of their minds to knock Marco out of that spot. But that's just my 2 cents on it. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think that they're probably hesitant to just give Hancock the spot out of spring training like they did for Matt Brash this year. I mean, if he comes into spring and looks gangbusters and has, just a brilliant spring and looks like one of the Mariners' best pitchers, I don't see why they would hold him back. They've had success running out their young prospects, and in particular in the starting rotation, and seeing how that goes. I think plan A is probably to have him in Double A because the Mariners don't send their good pitching prospects to Tacoma. I guess they don't like the PCL. But have him hang out in Double A, kind of like Kirby did this year, and have him be the first one up when something goes awry. But I wouldn't be surprised to see him get that spot. I think it's interesting to hear Mikey talk about Weaver in particular for the bullpen, or excuse me, for the rotation, because I just got off the other pod earlier this morning, and John had mentioned him potentially as a lefty specialist in the bullpen, maybe looking for the velocity tick up with a more limited repertoire and the shorter stints. I think it's genuinely a mystery how they want to use him. It really could be either or. If they're going to sneak him into Tacoma, even better, because then he's better option than Justice Sheffield or Asher Wojciechowski or Darren McCacken, which is probably a good spot for him in terms of where the 40 man is at. What do you think, Mikey?
What did John mean by lefty specialist?
Not specifically that he was looking to put him in that role, but that one of the openings the Mariners have in the bullpen in terms of a role available is a lefty specialist, somebody who can get.
I think what Mikey means
bats.
is that Weaver's a right-hander.
I don't know enough about Weaver's repertoire, how whether or not he gets lefties out better, so I can't speak to that. That is,
he could.
Is not something I've looked up.
Like I said, like he's he throws a good changeup. Because I think I see John's point, and I imagine that he runs reverse splits. But I think he's much better than that, and he threw about 95 out of the pen, which is pretty good. But his fastball didn't have very good results. So maybe I think it's kind of similar to Matt Boyd in a way. The difference is that Weaver can throw harder. Matt Boyd has, the slider. Weaver could have the fastball and has the changeup. But he's 29 years old. He's shown the ability to really spot his pitches. God, I just don't want to watch Marco pitch another year. Please, God.
I can stomach him as number 5 guy. I have no problem with that.
Marco? Yeah, it's fine. I don't have to watch every game.
He doesn't have the length that somebody had this year, right? Like, if the reality is that one of those 3 guys nipping at his heels is going to take that spot if he's bad. They're not going to let him Marco suck all year,
right?
Relatively speaking.
And who has a watchable number 5 guy? Like, name 3 teams with a watchable number 5 guy.
I don't think I can name 3 number 5 guys, but
the
issue is Weaver has thrown over 100 pitches. How many times, fellas?
Career-wise or last year?
Career.
5.
I'll say 10.
1.
Oh no.
He's eclipsed 70 pitches 1 time, and he's been in the league since 2016.
Wait, really?
Yeah, he deals with a lot of injuries.
Well, then why would he not be a bullpen piece?
Yeah, that's not starting caliber on the Mariners. The Mariners' whole thing is they don't do guys who, unless they can throw, 7 innings. That was their whole deal with Kikuchi, was he could only throw 5 innings.
And Brash.
Well, I don't really think that was the issue. I think Kikuchi is because he was not good, and Brash because
also yes,
kind of not good. Yeah, I didn't know it was that bad. But I think if they think that he can stay healthy, then it's a consideration. And then you have Flexen out of the pen. But it's not ideal. So perhaps. The Royals had him out of the pen pretty much all year, or maybe all year. He has 1 game started, but it might have been like an opener kind of situation. Yeah, I could see it going either way.
All right. Moving on, we have a section we call Fringe Guys. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at some of the Mariners who played. They played. Were they good? Were they bad? They played, that's for sure.
Every single player on this list will be a remembersome guy in like 10 years.
They were definitely on the Mariners. That much we can conclusively say. we have this split up in a couple different ways, but everybody here, I think, with minor exception, is on the roster next year. Is that correct? Minus maybe some of the relief pitchers. Everyone's
There's a couple
sticking
of pending
around.
free agents on here, I think, right? Or yeah.
Yeah, Hanny,
Haniger,
Boyd,
Frazier,
Frazier.
Boyd.
I think that's it.
That's it. Everybody else is sticking around. Well, why don't we start at the top, which is catcher? And I guess we can do you guys want to do grades? Do you want to do future fit? How do you want to do this?
I think I kind of want to talk about the fit going forward because I think that's what people are most interested in, and I guess their performance last year will obviously work into that. But who wants to start off these two fellas we have here?
I think that's you, Durs.
All right. So we have Tom Murphy and Luis Torrens. And Tom Murphy is the guy I'm most interested in because I don't know if you guys remember, there was a lot of hype in like April around Tom Murphy for how he was doing before he got hurt. So, he only played 14 games, but he was running a 168 WRC plus. He was already worth half of a win during that time, and he looked very similar to that 2019 season when he was worth more than 3 wins. So I think the Mariners, Jerry loves a bounce back. Maybe we're seeing signs of that bounce back coming to fruition. And we had to watch after he got hurt, months of the Mariners not being able to field a catcher after Cal Raleigh who could hit worth a lick. We watched them try with Torrens. We watched them try to acquire one with Casali, and that didn't work really either. I think Tom Murphy is the backup catcher for next season. I don't foresee them, getting someone else. I don't foresee them re-signing Kirk Casali, who we didn't even include on this list here. But I think that Tom Murphy brings a combination of veteran presence that they're looking for and his ability to actually consistently spell Cal Raleigh so that he doesn't have to play on a broken thumb for a month and a half. I think that that's kind of a perfect fit for them. Torrens, I'm really curious. There's a number of things they could do with him. They could ship him off in a package deal somewhere. I think they would have to DFA him again to send him down to Tacoma.
He has no options.
Yeah, so they'd have to do that. They could do that. I don't really know how hot the market would be for him. I don't think they should or could carry 3 catchers again. So I think Torrens is kind of screwed right now. But that's kind of my analysis of that position, the backup catcher spot for next year.
Yeah, I actually think Murphy and Raleigh are a perfect fit. Cal Raleigh cannot hit very well from the right side. I think Tom Murphy can hit lefties really well. Say what you will about veteran presence and clubhouse stuff. I think Tom Murphy is an insane competitor and highly respected in the clubhouse. I also think the Mariners think really highly of him. I think that they've always believed in his ability to hit. So maybe not as much as Zach Gottschalk, but I mean, in terms of like rolling expected WOBA over like 50 plate appearances, it was a career high in 2022. Small sample size, but I think he might have just figured it out. So he doesn't have to hit. He just has to be healthy, which is a question mark. And really, I think at this point, what we're looking for is for someone to spell Cal Raleigh, who looks like, I don't know, potentially an all-star catcher. So yeah, I think the two of them in the clubhouse would be pretty good. Also, Torrens is not a good catcher. He's not a good hitter. Not a good base runner. Can't play second or third, even though he takes grounders there. I don't want to speak too ill of him, but I think he is 26 and has got many chances and really has never. I thought he was breaking out in 2021 and I wrote about it. I think he's not good. So yeah.
And I think that the Murphy situation coincides pretty perfectly with what we hope will be Harry Ford coming up to supplement Cal Raleigh. at that point, one of them probably won't be playing catcher, assuming they're both in the organization at that point. But I think that lines up well that, like, if Ford comes up, he would probably come up around the time when Murphy would be leaving the organization or taking a back seat. Terens, I will say, only in 32 plate appearances in August and September and October. Had a WRC plus over 150. So, again, I think that's too small of a sample size to really do anything about. I think he's going to be in spring training, and they're probably going to DFA him, and he probably will just be catching depth in Tacoma, and he'll probably get a handful of games in Seattle next year anyway. That's my guess for Terens. And what he does with it, who knows? But
I hope Harry Ford is not at catcher by the time
yeah, I don't
he
think
gets
so.
up.
I think if they don't sign, I mean, I think they will sign an infielder. I think he's likely to be like a second baseman or an outfielder.
I wouldn't mind that.
Interesting thoughts there, guys. I like that. I thought that was very insightful. Let's move on to infielders. Frazier is not going to be back. I think we all agree on that. The contingency is I could see them bringing him back in a utility role if they sign somebody in front of him for second base, right? Like if they sign Correa, they could be like, oh, well, Adam Frazier is a good option B. And for what it's worth, he did not have a good year this year, but he played all over the field. He played center field in Julio's absence. He played left and right. He played all over the diamond. Like, he was a valuable piece for us in terms of the role he played, even if he wasn't good metrically and like a quality player. And there could be a role for him, but it should not be starting, which is what we tried last year. The other guy on this list is Evan White. Evan White looked really good in Tacoma in September, like as recently as weeks ago. Had very good exit velocities. Couldn't play very much. I think he only played like something like 12 games the entire year. You're not counting on him for anything, right? There's not. What else is there to add to that other than you're not counting on him for anything? Anything on those two guys? I think those are probably the easiest of the fringe guys in terms of like no.
I mean,
go ahead.
Evan White's 26. Like, by the time the season rolls around, he'll be 27 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Man, what a tough thing. And I mean, like, in terms of money, he's getting paid shit. So I don't feel bad for either side. In fact, I feel quite good about Evan White. I'm like, get your money. I still think, I think it's tough when you bounce around so much and there's so much uncertainty every year. There's something, but he never struggled with contact in the minors, and he's shown a ton of raw power. So I don't know. I still think he has it in him. I've said that before on this podcast, and probably not that long ago. But Adam Frazier, I think, is underrated. He's a great second baseman.
Just great second baseman.
Yeah, he's ranks super well defensively.
Sorry,
above average.
You mean defensively? Okay, mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I think if he hit like 2021, he's a great second baseman. Yeah. So I think Frazier is gone. I think you feel pretty good about it if he if the expectations that he's on your bench, but yeah, I think White continues to be somewhat interesting, and Frazier is on a different team in 2023.
Co-signed.
Outfielders. I think this is probably the most interesting group because Jerry specifically said we're going to carry 4 primary outfielders next year, which is generally always the plan. That excludes both Moore and Haggerty, who can fill in. It excludes somebody like Toro or Frazier, who can technically fill in. So of the options there are, I think obviously Julio is number 1, so he has a spot. But then below him, there's Winker, Trammell, Kelnick, and Lewis, who are all here. And Haniger, obviously, who would be a re-sign. How do you guys think that shuffle sorts itself out?
I think they do re-sign Haniger. I think he's they said a lot of things about how Haniger wants to explore free agency. I kind of believe that, for a player, this is probably a pretty exciting time, and you don't want to just, especially if the team is offering what I think they're offering, which is like one and an option or two, but it's not very high in dollar amount. I can't really blame Haniger for saying I'll keep, I'm going to keep talking to you guys, but I want to find out if someone else is willing to offer me more than that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing that's kind of where the conversations are. I think ultimately Haniger is going to come back, and that he's going to be one of those spots. I disagree with Mikey in that I don't think they trade Winker, but I don't know that he's a outfielder. I think he's a DH.
Mm-hmm. And they kind of sort of said as much during the meeting. They sort of said that he's looking more at DH than outfield time.
I'm also going to agree that I don't think Lewis has a spot, given to him. I think he has to play well in spring training, and he has to play consistently in spring training to even break the roster. I think Trammell is, what they would call in football a gadget player. He's gonna be defensive replacement, pinch runner. He'll start a handful of games here and there. He's mostly just depth, though. Unfortunately, I think a breakout is definitely still possible for him. He's a toolsy player with, he's got some very interesting skills. But I think that means, all that math means they need to find an outfielder from outside the organization.
I think this all sorts itself out with a trade. I would bet money that Winker's gone. I would bet against Haniger being on the roster next year. I think the only chance is if he doesn't think he can get, what is it, 18 million? Is it still? Who knows?
The QO is 17, I believe, but yes.
I think the only chance that he is on the roster is if he doesn't think that he can get that, or if someone's willing to pay him. I don't know who's going to be willing to. Did not have a good year on the whole. Has shown, an inability to stay healthy, which is what it is. Lewis, yeah, I don't know. If more than one of these guys starts in the outfield next year, the Mariners should be absolutely ashamed of themselves. They should be embarrassed about their selves.
When you say more than one, you mean more than Jared and Mitch specifically. Like if
Winker, Haniger,
or Trammell are getting a starting spot.
Kelnick, Lewis, all five of those guys. If more than one of them has a starting spot, including DH, I think the Mariners should be ashamed. Yeah, I think and Haniger, I think is the big kind of wild card there. Maybe if Kelnick has like a really strong spring, because he showed some signs of turning it around in September, not so much in October. But I mean, you just at some point you have to start. I guess at some point you have to stop relying on guys that can't stay healthy or can't perform over long periods of time. So just please go get like Brandon Nimmo or something, or anyone that's good and healthy. I guess Nimmo hasn't always stayed healthy. At least he's good.
I think there was a rumor floating around the Rockies were interested in Brandon Nimmo, and that's like such a Rockies overspend guy if I've ever seen one.
They're hilarious.
Gonna have Chris Bryant and Nimmo in the corners.
That's weird. An awful fit because, I mean, for his bat, like, sure, he's gonna rake. He's not gonna stay healthy playing in that outfield. I don't know that there's any evidence or data to support like playing in a fucking cavernous outfield is more detrimental to your health, but it makes sense in my head, so I'm gonna stick with that.
I'm gonna co-sign all that. I think that right now there's really only one actual outfielder in this organization, and everybody else is like a fringe fifth guy. And
We
they're
forgot
gonna
about Kelnick.
This is my thing, and this is, I think, what Mikey just said is I don't know if we believe that what we've seen from him lately puts him a tier above those other names, right? I don't like he didn't look all
No,
that great. As much as we want him to, he didn't look all that
I
good,
know.
honestly.
I think they're going to give him a spot though to
I-
break camp.
I would agree with that. I think that that's more because they have nothing else to do, right? Like,
Yeah.
they're probably going to have a spot for him. There's nothing else for him to do in Tacoma. He can hit decently in Tacoma. It's a question of, can he do it at the major league level? You might as well find out. Do we think he's going to be good? Next question.
I mean, I think there's a couple routes to go, but I think overall, you should expect for him to be kind of your fourth outfielder for one, with a decent fourth outfielder option in Tacoma, which I don't know who that is. Trammell, maybe.
Cade Marlowe. Oh yeah, we didn't talk about Cade Marlowe. Cade Marlowe is probably above most of these guys.
I don't know. I think he maybe is a fourth outfielder to break
yeah.
camp, but yeah.
I think Cade Marlowe probably makes the team over Trammell. Is that weird to say, in front of Trammell?
I think that's a real toss-up, and I think if they're performing anywhere close to one another in spring training, that's a definite Trammell. You'd probably go with the veteran in that case. But I don't know. I mean, I was, you guys called me a sicko, but I was saying, would you take Haniger or Marlowe right now without knowing anything? So, I guess I'm pretty interested in him.
I think the Mariners like him more than maybe even we do, than anyone realizes. I think that he has a very good shot to play next year. I think the dark horse for him is that the defense is pretty good, and I worry a little bit about Trammell's his legs working, because he had the injuries last season, and the defense was not plus as a result coming out of that. I just wonder if he can get back to that. All right, so we talked about the outfield. We talked a little bit about Kelenic. Let's talk about utility players. The Mariners have three, and really they have two infielders and one guy who can also play the outfield. They have Sam Haggerty, who was great this year, although obviously doesn't have the pedigree of the other two. We have Toro, who's something of a prospect in and of himself, but had a very peculiar and kind of dead year at the plate. And then obviously we have Dylan Moore, who, to my mind, has been his value this year was a little inflated by the dead ball and his speed defense kind of combination. But all these guys, other than Toro, obviously have some value to the team. How do you see the team sorting out the rotation of playing time for the utility guys?
So yeah, more than ever, I think Dylan Moore, like I legitimately think that he is, a legitimate, utility player. He now has, if you're looking from 2020 to 2022, he's been, an above average hitter. And obviously the Mariners are playing to his matchups. They're playing specifically, I think, him against lefties when they can. And I think he has, a strong ability to get on base because he walks much and to hit for some pop. So I don't really know what to make of Haggerty, because I don't necessarily think he's a great hitter. I think those are two pretty good utility guys. I don't know what to think of Toro. I've heard really good things about him, and I've heard that the Mariners really love him, but the numbers aren't good. He has an option, so I think you start him out in AAA. I don't know how much he has left to prove there, but I think he needs to play his way onto the roster because he was really, really bad in this year.
Agreed. And we're going to wrap it there for today, guys. We're going to come back and we'll talk about maybe some of the starters and the Rule 5 stuff and the relievers next episode, but we're out of time for today. I'm Evan. You can find me on Twitter at Evan James Audio. You can find Michael on Twitter at _Kuya Mikey. You can find Anders at Anders Jorstad. Find the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get podcast wherever it is you stream. Additionally, support the podcast on Patreon by going to patreon.com/neversunnyin-seattle. I'll have the link in the description here, wherever it is you're listening, as well as a link to the Discord. Feel free to hop in there, ask us any questions for the pod, chit chat with everybody else going on. We have a pretty good discussion, even though it's off season. So feel free to hop on in, and go Mariners. We'll be back soon.